Welcome to the One Within All. We're back. It's another episode of InnerVerse, and tonight's going to be a super fun one. Excited to be back live. Been a couple weeks since we did a live one, and we've got the great Dylan Saccoccio, returning champion. Dylan is possibly the most well-prepared guest, not just that comes on this show, but anywhere. And I have the honor of receiving sloppy seconds from all the scraps of leftover notes on other shows that he doesn't get to. And in this case, we have quite a lot on the table because I believe he prepared a ton for Topher's Biocharisma show that, you know, in classic Gardner style, as he says, they didn't even get to. But do go check that out. I believe it's going to be a double header and there's only one of the two out. But check out Biocharisma for a recent piping hot gravy session with Dylan and our buddy Topher. Really good times. And yeah, tonight, I know one thing, you probably are aware of this, but in the title, we're talking about the ancient Phoenician origins of the Norse mythos, which a very spicy subject for some people. You know, everybody has a little bit of my cult is the special one going on. We're not here to dispute any of the value or the goodness out of people's cultural uniqueness, but to show that when it comes to this wisdom tradition, it seems that the holy sailors have been everywhere doing everything, setting it all up behind the scenes of history anyway. And we're here to get to the bottom of that so that we can help you guys out there in the ways that you're able to no longer buy into the mosaic history and the frauds of the authority systems that have been taxing everybody for millennia, potentially. And, you know, it's kind of appropriate since tax day is now tomorrow, oddly enough. Anyway, you guys should definitely be following Dylan on his Substack. You can find all of his links at beacons.ai/great tide. That'll be linked in the show notes. And we're going to jump right in. But don't forget, the Spirit World book series is really your go-to source, even better than the podcast we do. Here's this newest, book 6, Terminalia. And unless you are just brand new here, you're also aware that I've done the audiobooks for a lot of Dylan's Spirit World series. The Holy Sailors will be ready pretty soon. We're about 90% cooked on that bad boy. So, Dylan, my man, thanks for being here. Always a pleasure. You're probably everybody's favorite.
Once in a while, I can hit them out of the park. I believe the word is a Gardinian tangent. And I'm not sure what's going on. I'm having technical difficulties. So you might have to carry the show with images. And unfortunately,
that's no problem.
You know, if I can't figure out how to work this, it's always like anytime that I have something going on, that's when the technical difficulties come.
Yeah. Mercury's in shadow and everything. It's totally normal. Everything's fine. Yeah, you've sent me some images already before we got on here, and I have those queued up and ready. I can screen share. They're kind of bigger if we do it my way anyway. So you just tell me of the things you've texted to me, what you want to see on screen, and then if there's anything additional, you just shoot it to me in a text. And
I don't know because I don't know anymore because like the reality is there's no urgency for anything. I think we could just go as what we have prepared, and then if something like jumps out at us, we'll go to it. If there's something that you're thinking about, fine, we'll go to it. But sorry, man. I have like a lot of stuff ready, but it is what it is. So one of the things that we've shared before is that Huygens suggested the Greek language was a child of circumstance composed from that of the Celti, the Ionians, or the Ionians, if they weren't the same people, the Pelagic from Phoenicia, a second race of Celti called Scythians, of which 16 letters were common to all, right? And so the ancient Greeks had 2 known alphabets, and that would have been the Pelagic, which is also the Attic, the Argive, the Arcadian alphabet. And Huygens thinks that was probably the same as Etruscan. And that was brought out of Arcadia into Latium by Evander, allegedly. But the thing is when you start looking deep into these like Etruscan like abecedariums, basically the oldest Etruscan alphabet is also, quote unquote, the oldest Greek alphabet. And so what they've done is they've basically hijacked Italian culture, and they say, well, because it has the same letters, it must be from Greek. But I always remind people the Greek got their 17 letters from the Phoenicians. So did the Irish, etc. And what you see is this gentleman named Davies, who's like acknowledging that all these, whether it's Ionian, Phoenician, Cadmean, Aeolian, all that stuff, they appear to have been the same in terms of radicals. And he wrote, they do not seem to have augmented the number of letters. Only 16 are ascribed to Cadmus. The same number is claimed by the Old Latins, by the Old Germans, by the Irish, and by the British bards. Now, I said 17 because that's like, there's generally things that they argue is a letter, like an aspirate, like the H or whatever. And they use them, but if you look into like, I forget which Irish dictionary, like you look in the old Irish dictionaries, they don't have a section for the letter H. So even though they use certain stuff, they don't necessarily account for it as a letter. And I think this is something that we were texting back and forth, that we should broach the subject, that some of these are just alphabets and not necessarily a language. Just because somebody has that system doesn't mean they actually use it, all the letters. And you can see this in like the Phoenician and the Etruscan. So if you have anything that you want to talk about with that subject, we can go like take some tangents or whatever. But if not, then.
Well, I just think it's super fun. And whenever you're able to start to get the grasp on the letter swapping that occurs, or especially that fun and finicky H aspiration. The example that it just sort of flashed into my mind the other day, I realized, you know, whenever you say that you have a sore throat, because I had a sore throat, you call your throat hoarse, but really your throat is feeling coarse. And what are horses' hairs known for? Being coarse. So that example is how the H, depending on how somebody is pronouncing it in their own dialect, can easily become the CH sound or the K sound or the hard C. You know, like just a throaty H does that. So horse and coarse are literally the same word, and well, philologically, not literally, I guess. But you even see how that is played out in common expressions of words. So little example there. And it's fun once you start to get some of those keys, like the deeper wisdom of how our language is almost in some ways divinely inspired. Like I don't even know how this happens. It's rather miraculous in some ways. It makes it a lot more entertaining.
It really is interesting. And so there's people that I pay attention to with like a lot of the Norse stuff, and there's connections that they're not able to make because they are under this presumption of the way things originate. And a lot of this is problematic because of the assumption about things like Latin coming from Greek, when I'm showing that it doesn't. The idea that Etruscan comes from Greek, and I'm showing that it doesn't. And so what I wanted to broach is when you like the whole reason that we're under the presumption that the Phoenicians, or whatever you want to call them, come from the East, all this is coming from the East, is because it has to, in order for Mosaic history to be true. How many times have you heard people talk about Canaanites, right? But in my book, I show you the etymology of Cana, and pertaining to the world, the stars and the zodiac, right? Like there's all these things they had to name that area Israel in order to conform to the Mosaic history, even though Israel is a Phoenician, per Porphyry admission that that's what the Phoenicians called Saturn. Egypt was never called Egypt. They had to reassign this stuff. So the problem that scholars have is they're still under the hex of Mosaic history and all this religious nonsense that's preventing them from thinking differently. And that's why I'm very grateful to all these other peoples, like the Taylors, the Higgins, all these people who they didn't get everything like as far deep as we are, because they didn't have access to the internet to share pictures all across the world to put it together. They still had to rely on accounts and whatnot. But one of the things I wanted to broach off the get-go is because I did this with
Let me
Gardner.
make a quick observation too.
Yeah. Do it all.
You brought up the whole Canaanites thing and coming from the East. Well, in the time period of around 200 BC, you have the Han dynasty in China in the East, which is back to that H to C. That's Can, you know,
It's like a priest dynasty. Cohen.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that before, but that's what I like about this is when you teach this stuff out, it's a system and everybody sees stuff that you wouldn't have seen. And so the more people you have raising their knowledge to this level and looking at things, the more that we will just blow the gates open. That is my goal, right? And so there was some accounts that in some old tables in Italy that referred to navigators as Puni. And this is all in like Etrurian stuff. And I've tried to chase some of this down. I don't think I'll be able to unless I get to go over there and see the tables for the tablets for myself. However, even with like status quo research and stuff, there's going to be this root that I'm going to show you that it pertains to things of a purple color, from mead or wine to fabric. And so I wanted to test you. I know I'm not going to be able to, you're probably going to get this.
You're going to have to back up a little bit. My internet just temporarily blipped out.
No worries.
Sorry.
Do we need to take a break?
No, we're in good shape. It's rolling, okay. But I had a blip at about the point we stopped referencing the Cohen dynasty of ancient China.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, just rewind. That way, you know, if you're going to test me, I want to have the full introduction to the topic.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live. Yeah, I just had a slight glitch.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we're like the stream's still coming through.
Yeah, even if I dropped out, you would still be live. So if I disappear, you can just keep talking.
Oh, we don't need you, motherfucker.
Yeah, we don't even like now that it's launched.
Just wind me up and let me go. Say I'm like the bull in the china shop.
So true.
So, what I wanted to show you was I did this with Gardner, and then I did this with our new friend Mike. He got it though, but he knows language. Like he's an ancient Phoenician himself, so he kind of got this. But so
I'm glad you talked to that guy, Mike, over at the what is it? Parallel Systems podcast, right?
Parallel Systems broadcast and that will come out. I don't know when they're gonna, but I didn't know that he even knew you or talked to you until after we did our podcast. They go, yeah, I did chant, and I was like, oh no shit, it's my boy. So, anyways, he got this. Gardner didn't get it. He fell into the trap. So now it's your turn. So I'm gonna write this word in a couple different languages. Or a couple different alphabets, I should say. It's only relevant in one of the languages in terms of its meaning, as far as I can tell with the tablets. So here's the first one. Okay, this is going to be the second one. I think you got skill. You're gonna recognize this. Some of the shit, I know it's not, but maybe the chat won't. And you'll have to forgive some of my writing for this letters because I don't actually write in presentation styles like this, and I don't actually write in letters that much. I'm used to like reading them and stuff. So which of these? See, these are all the same word. Or what do you think is the oldest?
The oldest is probably the first one.
Yes! Gotcha, bitch!
Did you really fool me?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Etruscan. This is Phoenician. And this is Hebrew.
Well, I feel like it's an educated guess because I was going based on how straight lined it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, this is part of the thing though. When you look at some of these things carved in stone, you have to look at the practicality. You have to look at what metals they had available to them in those eras, right? Sometimes you'll see primitive looking carvings. Sometimes you'll see exceptional looking carvings because the closer you are to the empire, and the very thing that gave the Etruscans so much power is they learned how to mine. Like all the mining operations that they got from their Phoenician ancestors, they had in place, and they were able to do it all in Italy. And so they're the source. So the further you get away as they colonize Britain and then Scandinavia, etc., the further you get away, the more primitive the carving gets, because a lot of this is all going to the empire, to the central places, not back in these days. And I'm going to read you some quotes. A lot of this shit was unknown territory not that long ago. And so what this is, though, so these all go right to left, right? This is pay. Pei is like a P in Hebrew, can act like an F as well. Vav, which would be like a U, V, or W. You have Nun, which is an N, and then you have Yod, which is like an I, a Y, or a J. So what this spells is Puni.
Right, and that's the Punic or the Phoenician original name.
Yeah,
I
can't string it out with you.
You should have at least let me tell the audience what the word was. I could have guessed it off the Hebrew.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Yeah, well, that's why I knew. I didn't think I was gonna fool you because I know you can read Hebrew, but
no, I'm not at the point of being able to tell the difference between Etrurian and Phoenician yet.
But you listen, you will be. It'll take like they're the same alphabets. Like that's why I'm saying once you understand this, and the reason it's easier to learn the Hebrew first is because it's a younger language and there's still a ton of old synagogue documents where you can learn it. Whereas with Phoenician and Etrurian or Etruscan, the problem is back then they were writing on papyrus and birch bark. And so a lot of this shit it's all rotted and gone. You're not gonna, all that's left is what we have from tablets. We do have accounts that they had a shitload of stuff left behind, but because it wasn't able to be preserved, we don't even know the language. Like you can't even decipher the language anymore, which is why I think we need to consider the fact that just like the runes are not a language, they're an alphabet. The language itself is going to be more Germanic, right? So we have to consider that the Phoenician, it might not even be an actual language, just an alphabet, just this 16 letter symbolism.
There's already precedent for that in the East, how many different dialect of different language speakers could read the Chinese alphabet, and they spoke, like they would say a different word for what they saw written, but they could all read and write. It's a trade language, so
exactly, just like the Chinese. Yep, just like the Chinese.
Yeah, that's probably what we're looking at, is a trade language where it was never really a spoken language. It represented words that in their language might even have a different meaning, which is again why the whole numerical aspect of the system is so important, so that you really know what it is that is being said based on the value of it. And then if it's a mercantile trade language, another reason why the numerical aspect would be extremely important. How much of what,
Yes, and after this, I think you should show that map of Genoa, when Genoa was the Commonwealth of Italy, because that pertains to Columbus. And I suspect this motherfucker already knew America and all this shit. He knew everything because that's part of that, business for what you said. You're like, this thing is just like one giant fucking company that keeps rebranding itself as the empires change. But so this here, it would be this Puni would be written in Greek, right? And then when I add their K and their eta, whatever, which is like an I or an E, it becomes Phoeniki. And that's their word for Phoenician. So you see Puni in Latin, Poeni. Well, that's the root of Punic and Phoenician. So when people
you think
say,
this also plays into like the name of the Finnish people?
I do, but later on, I mean, it's there in the root, right?
And then the Irish have the whole Fenian thing too going on.
And so like if you look at, but here's the deal though. Let me show you because I'm still on screen share. So when you look, this is the oldest rune stone that mentions Finland. It's G319, and this is dated to like 12, somewhere between like 1200 and like 1500 or some shit like that. And it's using the Italian fixed cross, right? Those are the fixed signs. So if you were to look that out, that's going to be the Gospels, the 4 royal stars. You have Aldebaran, Taurus. You'll have Leo, Regulus, you'll have Antares, Scorpio, and you'll have Fomalhaut. So the symbolism to me, this, you know, so in terms of like Finnish, yeah, they are the Phoenicians, if you will. It's discovered by that, but by way of Britain, circa sometime between like the late 800s to, you know, the 1200s, because they founded Denmark first, right? So this is the first, like one of the oldest documents with the runes, and it's written in the Vustrophion style. I can only say that word when I think about the Greek, because the way it's written in English, it's Boustrophaidon. But if you look at the accents in Greek, you can, it's Vustrophion. And that's, so what, if people look at one of the links I shared.
Just thinking about Denmark too, the Latin and Greek name for it is Dania, which is philologically Tinia.
Yeah, yes, it is. I didn't even think
Tinia.
about that. So I'm posting a link right now. I'll just say oldest Latin inscription. And if you want, you can pull that up. And the audience can pull that up for themselves. So that's written in the Vustrophion style. And where I'm showing, the reason that's significant is that is a technique of the earlier alphabets of this cult, wherever it went. And that's it. Now this is in, people are saying that's where Romulus is buried. I don't buy any, I just don't know anymore about any of that shit, but it is what it is. So just to continue, and we can get to this, whatever, anything you want to talk about, but that Punic is significant because, as I showed you in Hebrew, the Pe and the Pe acts like an F or a P. So then you would also have that P changing to the F. That's where you get Fenians. That's Irish term for Phoenicians, right? And think about like all the Finn, McCool, all that shit, Mikhail, however you say his name. Then you would also have that F and V interchange. And so you get the Venetians. So once you understand philology, you see they're all the same root. And if the only place where it goes back to where it actually signifies something is in Etruscan. And it's all related to purple stuff. And like Betham said, that the navigators, if they were Etruscan, they were referred to as Puni. So this is why I'm saying the Phoenicians, the Etruscans are Phoenicians, and they're descended from them. And this is where it gets interesting, because if you were to look at like the Phoenician word for our letter for R is going to look like almost like a reverse P, right? Like that. And then the Etruscan is going to look like a D with like a little bit of a stem at the bottom, but for all intents and purposes, it looks like a reverse D. And then the R for Greek looks like a P. So Punic is also runic, right? And so if you were to write that in I think it's the Elder Futhark, it would look like they have their R, U, N. Sorry, that N's a little fucked up. How would I do that? N, I, and their C is like a weird. So it looked like runic in the Elder Futhark. So you can see this, that uni, but also that R, keep in mind, that looks like a D in Etruscan. Now we're going to get somewhere. Because in the Old Testament, do you remember how the Jews refer to my Lord? Because they don't want to say the epithet for Apollo, which is Yod-He, Yod-He, or I-E, or I-H. They say Aduni. So that's what it looks like. So it'd be A. If you were to translate that literally, it would look like you'll have to forgive my Hebrew. It's absolutely atrocious.
We're gonna have to get you a big ass whiteboard.
I know, I know for sure. But that is Adonis. The Phoenician Adonis is the god of the Old Testament, whose mother is
Mira or Myrrh.
which is all pertaining to what?
The tree and the sea.
Mar. Yeah.
And Mar, yeah.
The sea. And we've done this with Mario, right? Lord Yo, we call him. But remember we did that with Thalassa? It means it's an Thalassa and Pontos are archetypes for the sea. And so you have the Thalassocrats, which were the lords of the sea. So I just wanted to show you. So I did that for Gardner. I might have done it a little bit longer and more in depth with you, but this is stuff that like this is a companion piece. So I'm going to write Gardner's website here. For those who want to see this, it should come out Friday, topherhq.com. So go there and stay posted. We just did one, so that's up, so you can at least watch the first one. But this will be a nice companion piece with him. So do you want to jump in and add some fuel to the fire? Should we keep going? Whatever you want.
I'm going to let you just keep going. I'll make observations. I'll jump in and make observations as we go. I'm like, I feel like
I just want to make sure you don't feel
like
shy.
crazy. You're writing in different alphabets by hand, like right out of memory. It's pretty awesome. Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I have like a cheat sheet just in case, because sometimes I get nervous and I don't want to freeze up in the middle of a live stream because I can't remember something. Because sometimes I'll catch myself writing in different languages and not realizing it. Like I'll accidentally write a Greek letter instead of a Hebrew. You know what I mean? So I just like to I do prep. So don't be fooled. I wish I was doing this all off the top of my head, but I'm prepped. Now, our boy Eilert Samis, he wrote about the declining of the Phoenician state. The Grecians began to trade into these parts. And he's from England, so he's talking about Britain. And they, who before had only heard of the Bretanox, which in the same sense they called Cassaterides, or the Tin Islands, now learnt the way to them and conformed themselves to the name the Phoenicians had given them, calling them first Bretonic Islands, afterwards Bretanis. So that's where Britain's name comes from, Phoenician. Now, upon the increase of the Roman Empire and the fall of Carthage, the trading began to decrease, and the Grecians, for fear of that powerful state, discontinued their voyages into the western seas, and it may be supposed that Britain lay idle during the space of 170 years till Julius Caesar's arrival. Now, I would call bullshit on that. I also think it's important that people, when they hear Carthage, again, they're speaking Punic, which is Etruscan, Puni, right? But to the scholars or whatever, another word for it is Sicilian Phoenician. Just like when you look at Biscayers, right, or Vizcaya in Spanish. It's ironically, it's spelled with a V in Spanish, but I think they pronounce the V like a B, Vizcaya. And then in Greek, it's spelled with the beta, but that's like a V, so it's Vizcaya in Greek. But that was known as Spanish Phoenician. And so what I suspect is that when this empire, whatever it is, fell, right, you have this entire maritime European empire all along the coast of the Mediterranean, everything from North Africa. You can see it there. You can see it in, let me see if I saved, no, I didn't save this. If you look at if you were to just type up Numidian, Numidian, right? That's what the Berbers were called. The Greek word Berber is kind of like stranger or barbarian. If you type in Numidian, I'll put it in the chat. You can look into their font, and you look into it, and you're basically seeing like the Norse Tiwas rune. It's like their T, where we're going to get to Tur or Tyr, right? You see words that look like the theta, the Greek X when it's capitalized, those 3 lines, like there's nothing about them that's original in terms of what people think are original. And you see all this, once you see the language, everything ties together. And so, like I said, that lull that he's talking about after the collapse, before Julius arrived, I think basically what brought Julius to Britain is that portion of the empire thought it was going to become its own empire and not pay tribute to Rome. And so once he got the British kings, to agree to pay tribute, the conflict ended magically. Not only that, if you look at what is in Britain, it's not just a military conquest. I mean, they built a freaking stone wall from the North Sea to the Atlantic, like across the entire continent. Right there, they were there for a long time. So I don't really think like there's this like independent idea that they were just in their own isolation and nobody knew about them. And furthermore, if you look at Divitiacus, he was a chief druid, and that was one of Julius Caesar's best friends. And Divitiacus was a sovereign, and his brother attacked the Roman army when they were there, and they could have killed him, but because he was friends with Julius, Julius spared him and returned him to his friend. He returned his friend's brother. And then whatever happened, the brother didn't agree to stay nonviolent. So he then led another attack against the Romans, and that time they killed him in battle.
It's like just classic mafia stuff.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And
I mean, empire has always been protection racket, has always been the game. And it's not even really necessarily evil. Like, it just is what it is.
Just business.
Yeah, just business.
Survival. You know, it's not even personal a lot of the times. It's like you got to fall in line. And if you're not, then you run the risk of, you have to be able to defend yourself, unfortunately. And that's one of the things that someone like me has trouble. I struggle with idealism. And a lot of the way I look at life, it's like, oh, if we could just, learn not to cause harm and all this other bullshit. But it's like, that's not how nature works. And that's not how we as humans work. And so even though it's like, we're not all the same family, right? Like the way these city states and stuff start off as like maybe a tribe. Tribes are near each other. They agree to start like working together. They form a village. Then they run into a village, a couple miles away. They agree to work with that village, right? And that's how it goes until it starts, they have the necessity to develop like city walls and like protect themselves from other tribes and be able to help each other and defend each other, all that stuff, and have the right to freedom to like trade amongst each other, and eventually just grows and grows and grows. And that's what happens.
Yeah. And trade is the lifeblood of society. So it is extremely important to foster that, protect that. And in fact, it is a form of warfare, even in a Cold War type way. Like if you bring in imports from the sea and you get all the gold coinage from the people you're selling it to, and then you sail off with that gold, that region just lost a bunch of the liquidity in its economy, and the velocity of trade for them is going to be reduced unless, circumstances bring more gold back to them. So, you welcome these mariners who might come and buy stuff from you as much as they're selling stuff from you. And in fact, like if you go into the old definition of the word purchase, like in the Webster's 1828, one of the definitions of purchase is to conquer. So it's always been that way. Like you can conquer a nation with trade.
Yeah. And you can also conquer them by starving them of that trade. Look at what America's doing to people with the sanctions and shit. And it's all backfiring against us.
And I think it's why things get so wonky whenever we come off of bullion, because now that sort of natural check and balance and weights and measures of how much physical money is in the supply and how difficult it is to get more money into the supply is out the window when everything's just numbers on a screen. And, the whole credit fiat system is a totally different beast that I don't think they're ever going to get worked out in a way that maintains equilibrium.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to note real quick, this came out a couple weeks back. It's the oldest inscription of Odin, allegedly, and it's on this hoard of gold, allegedly from 500 AD. Now, the things that I couldn't find with the article, so maybe this will be something for your people to look into, is what the percentage of gold is. Like, what's the content? Because based on that percentage, you might be able to date it, or, you know, see like what kind of, like, you might even be able to locate it, you know, like certain things, like some of these trades, for anyone who's ever worked with metals or anything, it's a lot of work to purify things. And so the higher the purity, the more skilled the smelter is, if you will. And so that's just something I wanted to bring up. But if, as you can see, for those who are looking, I know they're looking at your screen, but just to show you, there's the swastika, right? And it says Odin's man on it. And that swastika is, do I have a picture? Yes, I do. So this is a deity. This swastika is a cross. What is this deity's name? It's called Suparshvatnath. I don't know how to say that. Forgive me, Hindus. You guys can look that up. But as you'll see with this, let me go back. You have that swastika. You have that those 4 portions of the year. But what's under him? If you zoom in, you'll see that's the lion. And then and it almost looks like a Greek lion. And that's notably a symbolism for the sun, right? It comes from Phoenician lis, but it goes into Greek leon, and then you have that eleon in Hebrew. And what's interesting about eleon is if you actually transliterate it, it's spelled with a U. So so it looks like Oliun. And if you recognize that the L and R interchange, it becomes Odion or Orion. So that's something to consider. And when you see like the symbolism of some of the artwork, Orion is depicted with that club of Janus, with the lion skin, all of this stuff. And you can see how they're constantly applying archetypes to the sun, to constellations and stuff. And people need to recognize that what we know of the constellations, a lot of this shit is all modern. Like, not even.
We're also looking at, you know, there's some phalluses here that's a little blurry, but it's that's exactly the same as like you would see on a Herm statue or a term. And
terms, or termes.
The gold coin that we looked at a second ago is also funny, that the hoard of gold that it came from was called the Vindalev hoard. That sounds like a dish you would get at an Indian restaurant. Vindaloo, Vindalev, you know, but this is in Denmark.
Yep. And also remember Vinland, and then the V and F interchange. Vinland could be Finland, but they suppose that Vinland is actually Canada, Newfoundland, right? Newfoundland, I should say. And
then we're also now into the realm of words that connect to wine and the god of wine.
Bacchus. Or Phenicus,
all of these gods are
Shancus.
Symbolically.
This goes back to everything we've done on the Irish, like Phenicus, Shancus, you know, all this stuff. Phineas Farsaid, the mariner, right? So you see that. And if you look around the head of that statue you've just done, oh, there we go. Come on. Let's go, baby. Well, you said terms. Man, why is this thing acting up? I really can't stand this. You said terms. Come on, baby, for the love of Christ. Well, Newfoundland, or Lans-u-Medu, which is the place where they discovered, allegedly, in 1960, the Norse settlement in Newfoundland. Well, they put this up. So you see right there is like an occult cross of Lorraine. You see the Latin cross. This is Leif Erikson, by the way, Leif the Red. And you see he's fucking wearing the helm of Hermes.
Winged cap, yeah.
Mercury. So for those who don't know, Mercury, all these archetypes come from the Phoenician terms, right? You can look this up if you spell it the Turms, and that begets Hermes, that begets Mercury, that begets Odin, that begets Buddha, right? They're all the same archetype. That begets Jesus, right? Their mother is Maya, right? They're all related to the alphabet and eloquence, the gods of communication. Agmios, et cetera, et cetera.
I've just been thinking too about that word term. You know, we actually see a similar word in English, thermal, like thermal.
Thermal,
you know, like heat.
And heat.
And this is also the god of, so it's the fire, of course. There's that, which is the sun, but we're talking about this god is of wind as well. Wind and mind go hand in hand. And being of wind is interesting because you would actually see that in the heating up of air that birds. So this is birds are a big important symbol in this whole system too. Birds can soar on and fly on updrafts of hot air. You'll see like
what is
vultures.
fire in the sky aside from the sun? Lightning.
Well, you see like vultures over the road, right? And they're just sort of gliding. It's because that hot air rising up off the road allows them to, and they call that thermals. So I think about that whenever we're talking about term or terme, the Etruscan Phoenician Hermes here.
Yep. It's all there, and it's you can find it in literature, old literature. You can find it just in the art itself. But as far as like some of these things we're looking at, I don't know if it's passing the sniff test for me yet. I hope it's all real. I really do. I would hate to see that like people are constantly producing all these forgeries, but until I know more about that coin and the hoard, you know, I'll leave it on the back burner. I'm not going to say, no, it's not real, but I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out to be a forgery because, like I said, my grandfather owned factories and he had a business that we smelted metal and stuff for all kinds of things. We'd make everything from like stained glass windows and like the way you like make the mold and pour the molten metal in it and it dries and, you know, all that stuff. But my dad he would make us pirate coins and hide them. We'd go camp on an island for people's birthdays and you'd have to find the pirate treasure and they'd give us clues. So like we used to do all this shit, and just seeing how easy it was for my dad to make coins, I'm like, oh man, if you have the actual gold and stuff, you can fucking forge coins and it's not that difficult. But one of the things that
That's a super good point.
Go ahead.
There's also a fun comment here in the chat in terms of terms. Moonlander says, is there a connection to turmeric? And I think so, because another part of like, you know, in my opinion,
what color is it? It's gold. Turmeric's
it's gold. And I observe in the colonies that seem to have been set up by whoever these holy sailors are, that one of the things they spread around was the agriculture of root vegetables and nightshades and potatoes and things like that. And turmeric is one of those things. It's a root. And it's like it brings
Faber.
heat.
Remember Faber and The Origin of Pagan Idols? I think this is book 4. He wrote, Konon says, or Konun, that like Greek general, whatever he is, he said the Phoenicians once possessed the empire of Asia, and they made their capital Egyptian Thebes, which is all the way down in freaking Luxor. So you see that they had access to all these places, all the way down to the cataracts, which happens after the what is like Answar region. I don't know how to pronounce that. Forgive me, people in Africa. You're probably, you know, I don't mean to insult you by not knowing how to pronounce that, but yeah. So that is a possibility for this, because that's one of the things we're talking about with Mike. Is he's talking about like, well, what about these like mummies they're allegedly finding in Asia that have like the auburn hair? What about the Peruvian elongated skulls that have the auburn hair? And the DNA tests are showing regions from the Black Sea. And the reason this is significant is because I'm going to read you a quote from Polybius. If it's true, it shows you like a date of where this stuff starts to happen, and it shows you which region. And he said that for as concerning Asia and Libya, where they join with one another about Ethiopia, no one can say perfectly to this day, whether it be a continent running to the south or whether it be encompassed by the sea. So likewise, what lies between Tanais, which is north of the Black Sea, which is the area that's currently Ukraine, and Narbo, which is France, Narbonne, stretching northward, is unknown to us at this present, unless afterwards by diligent inquiring, we learn something of it. They that speak or write anything of these matters are to be thought to know nothing and lay down fables. Now, he was born at the beginning of the 2nd century BC. So what I would need to debunk this is just any type of inscription or something that proves that this is maybe disinfo, because that could also be why he's writing this, right? You could also be hired to say, oh yeah, nobody knows what's north of that. Meanwhile, the Phoenicians have already been up there with like Finland, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, all that stuff, around like the 60-degree north latitude. So unless you want to jump in, you want me to keep going?
No, I'm still thinking about turmeric.
My friend's Guyanese, and they're Indian. They were brought over as indentured servants, and him and his family, they always joke like, whenever you're injured, got a busted knee, put some turmeric on it. Got a scrape.
Well, dude,
it's like
I
the
looked up
solution to
what they
everything
call
is
it in
turmeric.
Sanskrit. In
What is
Sanskrit,
it?
the word for turmeric, termes, is
Yeah.
Haridra, which
Hari,
is
of
like hare,
course.
savior, and dra, or which is philologically tray or three. Interesting, right?
And Eri, or Heri in Etruscan, would be holy. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, and it has that
it's like,
reputation of being like a savior root, big time.
it's freaking wild, isn't it? And so the other thing of diffusion that is important is architecture. And we've talked about this before with the polygonal cyclopean masonry, but I just want to make sure people know this, because when you see this in Peru, you see this everywhere. He's telling you it's pelagic, right? So Bishop Thirlwall, he said the most ancient architectural monuments of Europe, which may perhaps outlast all that have been raised in later ages, clearly appear to have been the work of their hands. The huge structures, remains of which are visible in many parts of Greece and Epirus, Italy, and the western coast of Asia Minor, as well as the Americas, and which are commonly described by the epithet of cyclopean, because according to the Greek legends, the Cyclops built the walls of Tyre, Mycenae, might be with more propriety called Pelagian from the real authors. And you got to remember, for people, the reason this book is called The Holy Sailors is the Pelagi or Pelasgi, they were called di Pelagi, the Holy Sailors. And Pelagi comes from Pelagios or Pelasgos. I say Ios because like when you look at the word Greek, like gyro that we would say in English, it's pronounced euro or hero. And I think it pertains to eros and all that stuff. But the Greek acts like a Y and an H sometimes. So I don't know how to pronounce Pelagi or Pelasgi or Pelagi. So I just say Pelagi because it's like sounds good to me as an Italian.
And you just demonstrated why there is so much wiggle room with philology.
Yeah, right. And like the thing is to remember, people, is that's what the Greeks called them. So they're not Greek. They civilized the Greeks. That's what's important to know, because the way they have it to preserve Mosaic history is that everybody from the East is civilizing the West. When the reality is, like, the things that I thought, you know how like those purple dyes they're making are from the mollusk shells, those little like shellfish. And
yeah, Murex.
Yeah, exactly. So those are cultivated. If you look them up, the types, they're cultivated all along the shores of the Mediterranean in Europe. So to say that they're only coming from Lebanon is nonsense, because Italy, as Betham noted, was the first great colony of the Phoenicians, which improved on the state of civilization derived from their Surian ancestors or Turian ancestors, even more than Carthage. And we will get to that Tur root in phonetic, which is the Norse god of war, if you will. And so,
and we just bring up this map. I mean, it makes sense that Italy would be at the epicenter. It's literally Middle Earth right here, Mediterranean.
Yep. And for those who aren't familiar with so Genoa for a while was the Commonwealth of Italy. So this is where Columbus is from, and you can see it's all the same trade routes, right? And so you see like the Black Sea over there, all the way to the Caspian Sea. There's rivers from that, the Sea of Azov, that go into Belarus, Budapest almost, right by Moscow. So you can see they can take from all these colonies they've set up and trading routes, they can, or marts, if you will, where they set up, that's why we have things called like Walmart. Mart is a place to sell your wares. That's what they would set up there. So they weren't necessarily conquering. They were just setting up all these places for doing business. But you can take those rivers, even if you can't take them by boat, you can travel along them and get to all these places where eventually you'll be in like close to like the Baltic Sea and Lithuania and all that stuff. And so you see all this is real connected. And once all this is mapped, it's like, that is like kind of like you said, they've just had this ever since the Phoenicians. That company, that guild, if you will, that cult has had access to this and set it up. And so they just take over. And as we were talking just now, another thing from that Betham noted was the divinities of the Phoenicians and the Etruscans were the same, and for the most part, astronomical. Their supreme god, Tinia, so if people want to type that in, it's Tinia, seems to have been the object of their earliest worship, and there does not appear to be any ground to justify the notion that he was derived from any sensible material existence unless it was fire, which his name may indicate. But in after ages, the sun was made his visible emblem. And so what's interesting is that you still have the Greek version of that. The Greeks borrowed that, right, from Tinia, Athenia. It's in Irish, the Celtic, and it's in Greek, Athenia. But in Etruscan, it was, it looks like Minerva. It's Minerva. So the Latins took Minerva from the Etruscan because that's who they descend from, while the Greeks took Athena from Tinia. Same deities.
Yeah, the goddess of wisdom springing from the head of Tinia. It echoes in a lot of ways, and is probably, you could write the story one way or the other with the script of the stars. You've got the same elements in the story with Odin and his head of Mimir that gives him wisdom. It's like that's also the head of John the Baptist, and it goes on and on, but it's either the wisdom is springing from the head or it's literally a severed head.
Yeah. Yep. And we've noted that astrological occurrence that is at the end of August, where that's Aquarius and Leo. So Leo, Herod beheading John the Baptist. And
let's not forget that in the Prose Edda, Odin is actually referred to as the god of cargoes. Talking about trade.
Yep.
God of cargoes.
The wares, the merch.
Yeah, the merch.
Yeah.
Wares and bears.
You had to
there's
explain that to me. It took me
switch.
a while. Yeah. Yeah, so you got me back. It took me a second. I didn't realize until you said that. And so Sames also wrote the Cornish, right? Cornwall is another place where the Phoenicians settled. They settled the southwest of Britain. The Cornish, and then moved from there. But the Cornish and Devonshire tongue, differing both from the British and English, and not to be understood by either, but it agrees most with the British, but especially of the Britons of Armorica, or Britain and France. And those words they preserve common with both nations seem to retain in them the footsteps from the most ancient British language and have in them the very idioms of the Phoenician and Greek nations. Let's see here. So now I'm not hating on the Greeks, right? But people have pointed out the fact that the modern Greeks are a Slavonic race, Slavic, whatever, but they're not descended from the ancient Greece. So it's no longer the same people. And I think this is where a lot of this stuff has come with the Farrago, whereas people don't know what the traditions they're inheriting are, and it just gets lost. And you see this in all the religions and cultures today. It just happened to them a little bit earlier. And Sames, he agreed on this. He wrote, "And hereby we may plainly see the vanity and fraud of the Greek nation, who having received the names of places, as well as most other things of greater concern, from the Phoenicians, either new modeled them, or according to their own idiom, or quite changed them in sound, though not signification, and then imposed them, or imposed upon the world, new fables of their own instead of the ancient original." And why does this matter? Because the Etruscan mythology is the same as the Phoenician. They don't need to borrow the Greeks. They already have everything. It's on their artifacts. They already have everything from the Phoenicians because that's who they're descended from. And the status quo liars have said that the Etruscans got everything from the Greeks, when in fact they are direct descendants of the Phoenician, if not the very Phoenicians themselves, which I think with that Puni is it might be that they are those people who of the purple, right? The royals, that it's not so much royal purple like we would think of it today. It's more of like a crimson purple, Syrian purple. And
you mean also, like red associated with Mars, the god of war, who is admittedly by the mainstream is Tyre?
Good, dude, you're killing it. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. It's so friggin', it's so connected that it's like you can't get to it. You can't get away from it is what I'm saying. I'm going to show you something else though, because this is from my Substack that's not out yet, but it ties in perfectly for this. Where are we? So this is a bust of an ancient Etruscan, right? An Italian, right? This is found in Cerveteri, right? So they'll tell you, oh, these are, they'll tell you that Phoenician, it's Afro-Asiatic. No, it's not. It has affinity to Celtic. And not one Hebraeus can demonstrate a good affinity to Phoenician, even though all these Semitic languages, which is another farce, take the Phoenician alphabet. They got it because of that's the conquest. We're not coming from them. We went into them and brought everything. And so this is clearly not an Asian or a black person or an Indian. And then I'm going to go even one up you. Who does this look like to you? Does this look like anybody that you would know? This is another Etruscan bust or ancient Italian bust. Anybody in the chat see anything? Because I'm going to show you. I think it looks exactly like one for one.
I'm excited.
All right.
I'm going to make you big.
Liam Gallagher from Oasis looks exactly like the ancient Italian or Etruscan bust.
Wow.
Am I wrong?
No, I see it. I was thinking like Caesar, but that was kind of obvious.
So this is what I'm saying. He's Irish. The Irish are ancient Italians. The Scots are ancient Italians. Britain is literally Italy. They just peopled it through the trade. And then what happened from there? The Britons peopled and did set up the trade and all that stuff with Denmark. And then from there you go, it's all around the 60-degree north latitude. You got Norway right there. You got Sweden right there. You got to go a little bit into all those islands in that other sea. I forget what it is to get to Finland, but it's all there. And look at how close, like all these places like Holland, all these places are so close to Britain. That's why the royal families are all interconnected with each other. And they all look like these nasty, like inbred troglodytes. No offense to you guys, but come on. You're all breeding with the same families. So anyways, I wanted to bring that up before we continue. Hopefully nobody got offended. But if you did, send all your hate mail to chancegarden@gofuckyourself.com.
I get that all the time, by the way, emails to the guest, and they use my contact form on my website and everything. And they're like, excuse me, Dylan, I need to, and it's so silly. But yeah, send me your hate mail. I'd love to see it. Yeah. I don't think we're going to get any. Speaking of, I'm going to just let you know, I'm feeling it tonight. I'm really feeling it. I like our YouTube audience. They're great.
Yeah, dude.
Send some super chats, mofos. I don't have to worry about I don't have to worry about if there's like bullshit going on in the chat. We're getting some kind super chats from Marty and from Logan and from Rachel. Thank you guys. So we're just going to roll through this and do the second hour for YouTube as well. And
yeah, it was because if you don't send Chance super chats, he's going to have to go get a job. So I don't get any of it. I'm begging you. Please,
I have a sugar mama employed. I'm married now, and she's got a great job.
You got the sugar mama. Okay, great. He's balling.
Yeah,
no, this is good because we're almost going to get to do you remember last time we did the Phoenician origins of Thor? Now we're going to do some other stuff, but real quick, if it's not too much, I want to just go into that radical. Remember the pony? I'm not going to remember that Latin word for that, that purple, that Poeni, that root. Well, Po is also the Chinese root that they use. And another name for Buddha is Dag Po. And people remember Dag, that root is fish.
Po and Fo.
Fo and Dagon. And On is the being. That's the Greek version of the sun. Remember Plato wrote, tell me of the god On, who was, is, and shall be. So you have Dagon, which is Dag Po. It's all it's just like Vishnu, you know, turns into.
Hey,
the
guess what?
fish.
Odin, one of Odin's epithets is Herjan. Herjan.
Heron. Is it a
Harry
red
and
heron?
On. It's because like a J and an I are super interchangeable philologically. So that's Harry and On. And guess what it means in the Old Norse? Lord of the host.
There you go. But also look at red herrings. Remember heron? There's also the Huron. Like there's so many like things that are related to this stuff. Now you could say this is coincidence, and you might be right. Who are we? But once you start applying the other dots, this is what's so big about diffusion. I wish I learned this word recently. I wish I knew about it when I was writing Spirit World, because this is what we're out to prove. The diffusion between cultures. And what we have to, the task before us is, okay, is it there in the language? Great. That could be coincidence. What about the architecture? Is it there? Okay, great. What about the metallurgy? What about the tools? What about the techniques? What about the art? There's all these other little things. What about the weird little superstitious religious rites? There's all kinds of things where once you get enough dots, you got these people dead to rights. Dead to rights. And Sames wrote regarding, some of this stuff. He wrote the god Magon, or Mogon, to whom these altars were erected, seems to be brought into Britain by Phoenicians, and in all probability may be the god of the Canaanites. Obviously, he still believes the Mosaic history. Baal Magon, or Lord Magon. For as from Dag, a fish, they made their idol Dagon, or Dagon. So this idol of the sun, from the melting quality that planet hath, might from Mag, which signifies to melt, be called Magon. And that is Magon, or that is Magon, the British god, was the sun. And what do we have? Magus, magi, mage.
Not to mention, one of the ways that the god is often described, or the top G, is as like a fluid fire.
Right? I didn't even think about that. You had to insert that in there, didn't you?
I like to
G.
The top G, the capital G god is often depicted or described as a fluid or liquid fire, which electricity fits the bill for that, of course. And this is a god of thunder that we describe, but there's the magma, and Vulcan is a big part of this. Vulcan, or Bull can, Vulcan, the volcano.
That B&B interchange, motherfuckers. It's there.
It is. It's a big one. And so I'm just pointing out that like the Magus is also probably related to magma, which is the flowing fire, the liquid fire.
And that Vulcan, also the V and F interchange. So that's where you get Fulcanelli. It's a play on that.
Oh, absolutely it is.
So hopefully people are having fun. Now we're going to get into the Phoenician origins of...
Yeah, send me money if you're having fun. Thank you.
Yes. Pay his bills.
This is my job,
and subscribe to work at fucking Walmart. We won't be able to do this.
Yeah. But, you guys have been supportive. So that's why we're here having such a good time. Thank you for that. So let's just keep it going.
Yes. Keep paying him. And the capital of what they say was Phoenicia was Sur. And it's written in Phoenician, I gotta make sure I'm not going off screen because I wasn't looking at our, okay, there we go. So we have, so if you were to look at it in English, they spell it like this, Tyre, right? But in Phoenician, it's just this. And what's their resh? Oh yeah. And so that is a sadi, that's a resh. So in Hebrew, that would look like, forgive me, I suck at Hebrew. You have the
That's because
sadi
it's a
and the
very
resh.
silly alphabet.
Yeah. So this is like a T. So this is going this way, right? But now we're going to do English, and it's going to be TSR, right? Well, in Hebrew, they also have this. Sadi, Vav, Resh, which would then be TSUR, Sur. And what does this mean? Rock. And Lord. Their rock is not as our rock. They don't have the same God as us. You see? So the capital of Phoenicia, the land of purple, is God. Well, that's interesting.
The capital, like the cap, the head.
Caput. Oh, yep. And so Tyr in the letters is Tiwas. That's what I was telling you that you can see in the freaking Numidian writing. They're using these runes. And it don't look old. It looks new as hell, dude. It looks like crisp. A lot of this stuff they say is old. Why does it look so crisp, especially if it's exposed to the elements? And so Tyr would be written T-Y-U-R. That's basically T-Y-R-U-R. So they're interchangeable in the Norse runes. Don't ask me. I'm very new at those, so I'm just doing my best for what I know. But if you look up Tyr, you'll see he's a sun god. He's the god of war. And another antient name for him is Tu. Well, how do we know he's Mars then? Are we just speculating? No, because that's why you have Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It's Thursday. But Tur, if you recognize that the TH, that theta, is also interchangeable with the T, Tur or Tyr is also Thor. It's the same freaking name. And if you look at all the languages, you'll see symbolism of Mars on Tuesday. Coming from Sur. Syrian purple, and that's why you have Syrians. It's the same thing. SUR is also going to be SYR. So that's what I think they're tricking us with. And they want us to believe that we didn't have anything to do with the Phoenicians, when I'm telling you guys, that's Europe. It's Europeans. That's the ancient world. How do I know that? Because my family, I come from an old family. And our name, it's an old Roman family, and you're going to recognize it. And you'll probably not believe me, and I'll show you pictures, and I've got all the paperwork. It's how I get my citizenship to Italy. We're Etruscan. Whoops, let me start over. Can you read that?
Acer.
I see it. I saw it.
That's really a family name for you?
And what do they call the pantheon in Norse? Aesir.
What did the Druids call? What did the Druids call the top G? Acer.
So this is the only bust of Julius made while he was alive. And the last Caesar in my bloodline, like that had the name Caesar, was my grandmother, Catherine. And so her grandfather, I don't know if you can see it, is Domenico. He had platinum blonde hair. He's got blue eyes. He looks Germanic, as you can see. And I'll try to zoom in here. Oops. Get out of the way. So, as you can see, he is a Caesar. I'm a Caesar. He's got the same neck, same chin, even the creases in the freaking face. Same friggin' hairline. Thank Christ I didn't get that thing. For real. Look. Blue eyes. Not Afro-Asiatic.
I think I married into your bloodline.
Really?
Yeah. My wife has a lot of those type of features. Interestingly enough, I never really associated that with the Etruscans.
Yeah. So the Italians, they would pronounce that name now Cesare, right? Like Cesare Borgia, Caesar Borgia. So you ask any Italian you want, someone's from the family Cesare. What does that mean? They'll tell you. And he is his mother was, guess what? A Conti. So for anyone who wants to talk about papal history and all that stuff, the only family that produced more popes than the Conti family is the Orsinis. They produced 5 popes, the Contis and the Medicis produced 4 popes. So you want to talk about actual Illuminati bloodlines? I have it. And I promise you, the Etruscans, as I've just showed you from their busts, are not Afro-Asiatic. And so if you're European, people can come at me all I want. Oh, you're European nationalist, whatever. No, I'm friggin' trying to raise my people up out of this morass, this disgusting swamp of degradation, so they remember who they fucking were. Navigation, that's exclusively a European invention. Why? Because you need geometry. You need trigonometry to celestially navigate. Where was the first compound or community of Pythagoreans? Calabria, Italy. Santo Spinacci knows all about that. He's from there. So not to get too excited about this stuff, but you'll see, going back, Sur, right? Well, it's also Zur, as in Zoroaster, the rock star. It's also Sar. And if you look in Greek, the T, the S interchange, the C and S interchange, look at how sometimes you see Ichthys or Constantine's name written at the Hagia Sophia.
You think Michael Tsarion knows about this?
Might even be distantly related, because why? Caesar.
He claims that his family, I think he claims his lineage is actually from like northern India, where his name came from.
Maybe.
Interestingly enough, not like that they're from there.
But if you look at the Phoenician and Greek conquest, they went into India.
That's what I'm saying.
All the way around. And where else? How are Caesars pronounced in the Bible in Greek? Caesaros, Caesari. And so we have Kaisers. This is why the Holy Roman Empire, it wasn't a big deal to shift it to the Germanic peoples, because it's basically all the same thing. That was like one of the things that broke out, was between the black nobility, the people that supported the papacy, and then the people of the empire that supported the Holy Roman Empire, Holy Roman Emperor, right? And who saved our ass in Europe from the Ottomans? Fucking Poland. Poland whooped that ass, dude. The Ottomans thought they were going to come into Europe and have their way with us, and Poland whooped that ass. So if you're in Poland, yeah, you better have some fucking pride, dude. You're a tough people. For real. Don't let anybody tell you you're stupid. Oh, why do seagulls fly upside down over Poland? Because it ain't worth shitting on. No. They're always mocking everybody. They're always trying to make us feel like we didn't have a hand in the greatness of our ancestors. And our ancestors are great. And you need to remember that, because the standards we have for ourselves in America is utter fucking trash. And we're going to lose our nation. We're going to lose our culture because we didn't have high standards. And you need to start recognizing, no, this shit wasn't done by fucking aliens. No, this shit is not done by all these other people with an average IQ of 67. It's you. It's your people. So if your ancestors were looking on you right now, would they be proud of the standards you have for yourself? And if the answer is no, then you need to raise the fucking bar, guys. And I do it to myself as well. Nobody's harder on me than me. And that's one of the things that Gardner and I were talking about. He's like, I'm so hard on myself. If there's one thing I could give you advice is don't be hard on yourself, you know? But you see, Sir, Tyr, or Tur, Tutates, right? And another thing we've talked about is that quote from Sames.
Oh man, Tu and Teutates. Yeah, that's Thoth. And Teotl in the Americas. All the gods that have Teotl as termination.
And there's only two people in the ancient world that were known for making drink from barley. People in Egypt and the fucking Britons. Because they didn't have the wines. Like Italy has such good wines. They didn't have to worry about that. Right? So Sames wrote, Tutates was a Phoenician god. None can doubt that he was. None can doubt. If they considered what Philobiblius writes out of Sanskrit, which actually is not a person, it actually means, Betham exposed, it means the old book of time in Celtic, if you look at the radicals. The ancient Phoenician writer, Teutus, was born of Miser. He invented the first elements of writing, whom the Egyptians called Thut, the Alexandrians called Thuth, the Greeks Hermes or Mercury. He was promiscuously called Thuth, Thouth, Theuth. By Plato in his Philibo, he is called Thuth, and in his Phaedrus, Tammuz, king of Egypt, which is basically Tammuz, and Egypt is darkness, so I think that's another winter sun symbolism, right? Who has a long conference with him of the use of letters where he called him the father of letters. And so one of the reasons I suspect the system doesn't come from the East, as we've been taught, is because of what Betham observed. He said the astronomy of the Buddhist is very striking and ingenious. They have 9 planets. They have the sun, Zuru. I don't know how to pronounce that word. He typed it out as Zrru. The moon, Kandu. Mercury, Buddha. I'll say that again. Mercury, Buddha is what they called it. Venus, Sakura. Mars, Angaharu. Jupiter, Brahaspati, which is basically like Bada Pater, like the creator father, creator God, if you will. Saturn was Anahasu, one named Rahu, which was invisible or eclipsed, and one called Ketu. They divide the zodiac into 12 signs, of which but 4 differ from modern astronomy. Gemini is a husband and wife, Sagittarius is a bow, Capricorn a deer, Aquarius a water pot. Now, in this, do I say this right now? Do I make my point? No, I'm going to say the rest of this quote and then I'll make my point. The Buddhist zodiacs are not certainly in perfect conformity with the Greek, yet they are all indicative of the same meaning and unquestionably were derived from the same source, the Phoenician. Much more might be said, but enough has already appeared to remove the first barriers of incredulity, to induce even the learned to doubt the soundness of the grounds for their unbelief in the common origin of the Celtic and Eastern systems, to call upon them to hear patiently and weigh seriously the evidence which can be adduced, and not ex cathedra to put down inquiry with sic volo, sic jubeo, I command my will, because they have been taught to believe the Greek origin of everything ancient. And so here we see, in my opinion, just from this forensic stuff that we're doing, more confirmation that not only was Buddha the same archetype as Mercury when they were the sun, but also when later ascribed to the planet. And in my opinion, this proves that the system comes from Alexandria, as the planet called Mercury until the 2nd century BC was called Stilba. And the name Mercury was not ascribed to the planet till the 1st century AD. So the current Buddhic astrological system can't be older when it's using the Greek and Roman system and borrowing their changes. They have Buddha as the planet Mercury. That's the exact old solar epithets to the planet, right? And Mercury and Buddha's mother is Maya, Adonis's mother is Mira, Jesus' mother is Mary, etc., etc. And so this is why I differ from everybody. I'm saying, no, this is not coming from Asia. Could it have come to Asia or from Asia originally? Yeah, it could have. But what we're seeing now,
we've talked about this
like
before, but just the Dharma wheel. That's like a sailor's wheel. Dude, Jesus, take the wheel.
Dude, and the astro, oh, this is another thing we can go into. This is, I have a post coming out that's going to be speculative. This is a mariner's astrolabe. And when you look at like all of the Biscayer, the Basque people, all their like, whatchamacallit, they're like gravestones, and they have all of this symbolism. They have these crosses. Look. The swastika, the cross, right? That's they've got it in one, both, you know, so it's like they're using
this is in the Iberian Peninsula.
Yep, this would be like northern Spain, the Bay of Biscay, if people want to look at it. Biscay, and that whole region is the Basque people. And if you recall, they're the Spanish Phoenicians, right?
And
so
Biscay
look at this, dude.
Is philologically Bacchae. It is.
Do it for me. Oh yeah, because yeah. Oh Jesus, yeah, because the S and the C. Damn, dude, Bacchus. So there you have it.
And the S becomes a C or a CH or K easily. It happens.
And look at all these Celtic ones in Ireland and shit. And like let me zoom in so you can kind of see what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
look at all these old graves, dude. Look at all these old graves, man. And so I suspect, look at this one, is freaking awesome. I suspect, and I could be wrong, that we may be looking at, in addition to the astronomy, these are all modern graves. Like you can tell these look, they're just so crisp that I'm not putting any like emphasis that these are ancient graves or anything like that. But I just wonder, and it'll be something that we'll explore for people who are my members on Substack, if there is something to the mariner's tools and some of this religious symbolism, in addition to the like another layer of it. I'm not dismissing any of the astrology. I'll never give that up because I know that for a fact I can demonstrate that. But I just wonder if some of this other stuff there's some sneaky stuff in there.
I also really like interpreting the word of God, logos, savior, deity as the written language, the alphabet itself, because this is the preserver, right? And what does language do? What does an alphabet do? It allows wisdom to be transmitted into the future and be preserved or saved. The word of God. It makes so much sense. Yeah, I know you probably have a lot more you could say about that.
Well, I was just going to say, like, even if like, let's say like someone was lying to you, right? But if the document is authentic, even if they're lying, you can analyze the language and learn something about that from a chronological perspective. Because as long as the language is authentic, it doesn't matter what people are saying, you can figure out stuff. So that's why I acknowledge Archbishop Richard Trench, because I really believe like someone who's probably the most responsible, and this is a dead man. This is a guy who probably didn't have any of the beliefs that I did, but he taught me Christianus. I learned this stuff from the highest of the high in these systems, right? Why don't you go look at how many archbishops there are in the old world a couple hundred years ago, right? You know what this is, right?
Yeah, that's cress or crease.
But this eta acts like an E, like an I. So like a Latinized I, or, you know, so it's E, right? So you have Christ, right? So this is the crux of the matter. Christianos means Christian, right? This means good, Chris, right? In Sanskrit, Krishna means black, but not because they're Afro-Asiatic. That's where I think a lot of these problems are coming. Same with like those little spiral on the heads, those knobs that people say, oh, that's African hair. No, that's actually alluding to people's ranks and shit, but based on how many of them there are. And this Chris, good, and that is a Latin termination. So even an archbishop taught me we have a problem of a word that is an artificial construct. It's monkish Latin. And you have Reverend Robert Taylor, who makes no bones about it and really drives it home. So he's no longer dancing around the subject. He's saying your entire New Testament is written in monkish Latin, and you can see it in tons of words. They didn't even bother changing it to make it look like a real Greek word. Right? So this stuff matters because they told us on the front page of the Bible, the title page, that it was faithfully translated from a Greek original. No, it was unfaithfully translated from a monkish Latin original. And Eusebius admits, who did the Gospels and Epistles come from? He said those ancient therapeuti were Christians, and their writings are our Gospels and Epistles. This is the father of ecclesiastical history. There's nobody who can criticize me who has higher authority. He admitted it. And you're not going to get it in English unless you have someone who's really translating this shit from Greek. That's what Reverend Taylor did while he was being falsely imprisoned for blasphemy for creating a pamphlet to try to wake people up back in the 1800s, early 1800s. And so what I'm saying here is the reason I specifically focused on language, almost like autistically, is because I knew once you have these keys, nobody can hide anything from you. You cannot, doesn't matter whether it's Norse mythology, Italian mythology, Asian mythology, Hindu mythology, none of that stuff. It can't be hidden from you. That is the wisdom, the eye of providence, that unison, that all-seeing eye, that doctrine of wisdom, that doctrine of emanations, and the sun, that mediator between us and God, which we have no idea what it is, the light of this world, connects us to our creator, gives us life. And then we, in turn, develop systems that require these wisdoms, these systems of communication and commerce.
Man, you've just been laying it out tonight. This is just a golden thread. It's obvious you've been on some serious research kick for a while, and it's great.
I sat on this shit for years, dude. I put enough out there and was like, please, somebody who's not me, take this. Please, somebody who's not from the black nobility, take this. Please, somebody who's not a fucking Caesar, take this. Somebody who's not Italian, please take this. And nobody took it. And the problem with me is I'm emotionally charged with it. I've got serious skin in the game. My family has been lied about. There's not one word in the entire body of Roman law that persecutes Christians, that's even against Christians. On the contrary, we protected them. And so you have billions of fucking people who shit on Italy. They take everything from Italy. They don't give us credit for Italy, for anything. They say that we persecuted everybody when we set up an empire, that they all have these conveniences, that if it weren't for Italy, you wouldn't have this shit. And it was only able to be done because of the standard of code of honor of Europeans, right? It's not the rulers, it's the people. We had a way of dealing with things. That's the only way you can actually band together. America had it. Britain had it for a little bit. People have it for spurts, but no one had it for as long as this ancient universal empire. And where it really gets bad is when people really start going to conquest. And so if some of that shit is true about the Romans and the Greeks, that's immoral, right? But when you look at the Phoenicians, they weren't conquering. Even the Greeks in a lot of places, when they took over the system a little bit, if they're even different than the Italians at this point, I don't know. I think Greece, Italy, Egypt, North Africa, I think it was all the same thing. I think they were all part of the same thing. just like Britons are all part of the same thing. And then what happens? Once you no longer have that code of honor and standards, everybody starts fighting with each other. We see the same thing happen in families when somebody who's like a patriarch or something dies, and then everybody fights over their fucking inheritance. And people you thought were family treat you like a stranger because now money's on the line. So that's what I think is happening. I think it's human nature, but this is some of the cases that I'm laying out. I could be wrong, guys, but what I'm not wrong about is my fucking family and our ethnicity. So when you hear people saying that, oh, well, they're fucking Moors and they're Asians and they're all this other shit, they're everything but what they are, that pisses me off, especially because people in America, our culture was really good for a long time, right? We grew up, where I grew up, there was community. You knew everybody. You didn't have to lock your doors. It wasn't as dangerous. Outside the city, America had all this amazing stuff going on for it. Is there other stuff that's bad about it? Sure. But that's more to do with the times than just America, right? Everybody had these systems of, slavery. There's nobody that didn't take slaves. Doesn't matter whether it was Mexico, Byzantium, or what's that called? Constantinople. Every open market in a city, you could buy and sell slaves. The ancient world is terrible for that. And people were just as many European slaves as everybody else, right? So obviously that shit's trash. We don't need to state the obvious, right? But what I see now is a concerted effort to destroy people of European culture from within, and it's people that are being bought out by foreign interests. And they're polluting us with terrible entertainment, porn, junk food, all this shit, and getting us fighting with each other, whatever. And so the goal of my work is to teach people this ancient universal system so they can see it for themselves, and that so you guys can start, people can hold each other to higher standards and take pride in their past and take pride in their culture. This nonsense where everybody's equal and you shouldn't have pride in who you are and your people. Bullshit. You should have.
Well, that's what's on the surface, but then below the surface, it's like, well, I'm pagan and I'm Christian and we're different and we don't really mix, but we're talking about the same thing. We're all part of nature. You're not apart from nature.
Yep. And every person watching me has ancient DNA. You're here because only the strong survive. Some of us know our ancient DNA because they this is, I've got a post coming out about this. This is one of the things, the reason I know is because I'm actually Italian. So anybody who has serious roots in Italy, Italy's been the epicenter of the ancient world because of its location in the Mediterranean. So you have people from Italy, a lot of them are from these ancient families, these powerful families. And now they don't have power because once Rome collapsed, Italy was ruined. And so now what you have is the illustrious poor, people who are literally nobles, but they've got no estates, no riches. And Mahmut, that Turkish spy, he writes a funny story. He was in, I forget what part of Italy he was in, but he saw these guys who were actual noblemen. And he's like, they were literally climbing fig trees to eat so they wouldn't starve to death. And I shouldn't be laughing, but that's kind of, it is. It's like, just because you're from an ancient family and a family that was participating in, these empires, it doesn't mean you're a special boy or you're better than anyone else. But don't try to take from us what our ancestors did. That's my thing. And right now they're destroying history at an alarming rate. You can't find half of this shit on Google, even more. If you don't know what you're looking for and know how to search exactly, you can't find some of this shit. They're literally.
It just, what you found yesterday will disappear today. I've been for the last several minutes trying to get Google to even give me a search return. It just keeps locking up. And I'm trying to find this. I don't know obviously with a lot of this stuff, we don't know the true date or maybe where it's from, but you were talking about the curly haired aspect and the Krishna.
Yeah, they look like these little spirals on the head, like these little spikes. And so some
Right,
people
which
have
is how
speculated that
Bacchus is
that's
depicted. 100% of the time, Bacchus is depicted that way. And
but
I
you
had
see it on the
found
lions too. You see it on the
I'd
Chinese
found, and
lions, the
I
garden
didn't
lion.
save the picture, and I can't get Google to work. I'm not even kidding. It's just like giving me
Oh
this.
man.
It's giving me this. Can't find the site, but in Shivta, Israel, there is and supposedly an ancient depiction of Jesus with curly hair in exactly the same way as what we're talking about, not the sort of traditional, long, straight haired hippie type of Jesus. But I just thought that was interesting. I'm not able to find it, but I'll put it in Telegram later when I do get to it.
So I work with, this is my second book in my fantasy series. Let me tell you something about hair. The hardest part of this picture, I mean, if you can see how detailed it is like he did such a good job. This is one of my favorite artists. I reached out to him and he could do it. But one of the things we had to spend a lot of time on was the hair, because the hair kept looking like a hobbit and like curly and bushy. I'm like, I don't want him to look like a hobbit. He's not a fucking hobbit. I want him to look more like a Norse elf, right? Like an elvish. Hair is literally the hardest thing for an artist to depict because it's so delicate. It's really difficult to make hair not look bushy and curly. So that's one of the things you're going to see in a lot of statues. Like even some of the ones that I showed you, they didn't bother making the hair. They just carved lines into the skull to kind of give it that illusion. So it's one of those things. It's just hard. It's a hard thing to depict, but I wouldn't judge something like a lot of the busts that I didn't include in some of my work. They look like cartoon characters. Like there's no human alive that looks like some of these statues. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like trying to compare, like, would you try to compare Americans by going through old Simpsons episodes? No, they have 3 fingers aside from the thumb, like, so there's stuff that like you just have to look at from an artistic perspective, that there's a lot of shit out there that's not actually realistic, but the stuff that is realistic in real life. Oh, there you go. Oh,
This
hey,
is a
that looks
Numidian
like
coin.
Yova. That's Yova.
That's Numidian, supposedly. So curly hair and the horse.
Yeah. So that's freaking, go look. Can you go on that wiki? Are you able to? So that's King.
No, I'm having weird internet problems. I can't open anything that's not already open.
That's King Juba. But if you look how it's spelled in Greek and pronounced, it's Yova, which is
Job.
What?
You're talking about Job?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? How we've got Tetragrammaton as a king, and you don't think that's astrotheology? And what's one of the grossest, egregious pronunciations that you hear people say? The book of Job. How is Job written? Iota, omega, beta. Yov. Jove. Don't ever, if you're Christian, it's time to raise the standards for you. Stop saying book of Job. It's book of Yov. You can pronounce it correctly. You have permission from the universe to actually say things the way they're supposed to be said, so people can actually know what you're talking about. Yova. Yova, Yuba, king of Numidia. And there's another one to look up. I think it's his predecessor, Bocchus. I mean, if you can't see that that's Bacchus, I don't know what to tell you. Look up these Numidian kings, guys. I might even have a picture of one.
You probably do.
There's a, what is his name? I know I have him somewhere. I'm going to type in Numidian kings, and I'll tell you what it is.
Oh, we got a how dare you.
Oh, you, sir. How dare you? Oh, how dare you? Fucking Jortonians are coming. Oh man, where is this guy? Can you see on your wiki who that I know that's King Yuba, but let me just say, you mean King Juba.
No, I don't know what's up with my internet, but I just get.
We've been having some glitches. Something is like doesn't want us to do this.
I broke Google by trying to show you guys curly hair Jesus. It's
Oh
just
man.
broke.
Yeah. So that guy,
It's
Bocchus
Mercury
the second,
Gatorade for sure.
I think it was the first king of Numidia. First king of. Oh, there it is. Massinissa. Okay. Give me a second. Oh, isn't it interesting? Nisa? Where have we heard that?
Nice.
Masi? Messi? Moshe? Messiah? Something's not adding up here.
That's one thing I really liked in Terminalia, your 6th book, about all the Messiah, Moshe, MSE, MSH words going on in the Americas.
Yeah, isn't that
especially.
awesome? Well, so that's what's exciting about this. Oh man, why can't I find this, dude? This is really, I mean, you can see he's clearly like a Celtic vibe. I just want to show you this. Like, this is a bust of him, right? But like, this is literally like some of this shit. This is a painting. That doesn't matter. Dude, it's like you said, every time you try to go find something, it's gone, man. It's literally, and it's gone. So for anyone who, that's him right there. I don't know if you can see him, but it's like clearly not Afro-Asiatic. If I can find it, I will.
It's
I don't
so
want to
weird.
waste.
Jenny on the same Wi-Fi in the same house, she's able to Google stuff. Like there's, I don't know. I don't usually ever think like they're trying to hurt me, but it feels like there's something messing with my ability to search stuff.
You know what it is? I wonder if it's like just a timing thing. You know, oh, here we go. This might be a little bit better. Yeah. I mean, come on now.
It's okay. We're all hanging out. We're having a good time. This is live TV.
I mean, is he Asian?
There you go.
Is he Asian? Is he African? Come on, guys. This is why they have the same, there's these genetic affinity between the Berbers or the Numidians and the Finnish.
That guy looks like you. Like
I would literally kill to be able to. So I'm part American. I'm Anianwaya. I'm part American Indian, and so I don't have the ability to grow a good beard. It pisses me off. Not gonna lie, but it is cool to kind of have that Celtic. You know, one of my ancestors is from France, so from Gaul, and they grew over here because the French were allied with what they call the Cherokee. But that Cherokee is that they didn't know what that means, like Creek language or some shit. That's what they call this because they didn't know what we spoke.
Creek? That sounds like Greek.
Yeah, Grecian,
you know,
Cretan.
What's the third letter of the alphabet? It's a C, but what's the third letter of the Greek alphabet? Oh, it's gamma. It's a G. C and G, they completely interchange. Your mouth does the same thing. Greek and Creek, it's the same fucking thing.
It is so wild when you think about that. And you know, so one of the things I've been looking at on my Substack is I've been exploring the ability of like where does this diffusion come from, right? So like even like I've got a post, this is coming out from a later post, but like you see like this is the dates and roots of the so-called Norse, which even the status quo concedes begins in Britain, right? 793 AD, 795, 820. And you can see it's almost the same as the Empire of Genoa, right? They go up through here, Denmark and stuff, then they get up to Finland, all that stuff. This is the Baltic states. You have Norway, Sweden, Finland, right? But you got to remember, they're freaking like 60-degree north latitude, dude. You know how cold winter is there? I don't think you're surviving that without advanced technology. Well, I guess you could call it technology, but you know what I mean? Like advanced, like yeah, you could probably survive as a man with like some fur skins and all that stuff. But like when you start thinking of like little children and babies and doing the stuff that you need to do, like I don't think they can survive in these harsh environments. So I think what they were doing is they were just going from them in the southern time months. And I think the reason they knew where all the fucking Why can't I think of them? I want to say chapel, but not. What is monasteries? The reason they knew everything is because they're all part of the same fucking thing. And I think those stories are greatly exaggerated about Vikings, like in terms of the bloodlust and stuff. No, it's probably like, you took this from, you kicked us out of here, motherfucker. We're getting some of our shit back. Because if you look at the Abacadariums, the freaking Anglo-Saxon runes and all that stuff, it's like the same thing. I mean, you can see a little bit of Greek in there. You can see a little bit of, it looks like it might have given way to what some of the Russians use in like that Cyrillic and stuff. But then they allegedly go to Iceland. But what is also on the table? The Irish monks were in Iceland and they were all speaking Latin. And they left eventually and the Vikings took over, but it was Irish monks. That's Ireland right there. And then came over to Greenland.
And the Irish had the use of the alphabet and the Latin. They were like, they were people were being sent there for education on reading and writing. Am I not wrong about that?
Yeah. Britain was known, like that's where the Gauls would send everybody. So you have like Amsterdam and shit. Like the Gauls were all sending their people to Britain to be educated by the Druids. So some of these accounts from the Druids, I know it's disgusting, but I wonder how legit it is. Like if they were really as bad as some of them turn my stomach, but I also see it with the Mexican culture too, because allegedly they believed in the transmigration of the soul. So they didn't actually think you were
just as
killed.
Buddhism does.
Yeah. Like they were, yeah. And so like the idea is, well, and this is kind of sick, but you see it in Satanism too. It's like, we're not killing him. We're just sending him on a different part of his journey. He can't be killed. So there is truth to it, but their application of it is like really perverted. Like, oh, you just come back. And one of the things,
and I know, and when you have the whole doctrine of like, whoever suffers hardest is the most special boy. You know, like I actually had this in a tuning recently that I did for a client where somebody had told them that they were living a parallel life where they're being like drugged and sex trafficked. And they had basically like this long running complex of, to be spiritual, I need to be suffering the hardest. And so like their body's responding to that, you know, even especially with some of the weird beliefs that have been put in their head from other so-called like healers and like quantum fixers and whatever. So my point being that like, if you have that idea and then you are engaging in human sacrifice and you believe in transmigration of soul, you could even possibly talk yourself into like, I'm doing them a favor by ripping their heart out on this altar. But on the other hand, you have to question like how much of that is true and how much of that is hype from at the time was the current ruling mafia, where they wanted to make sure and distance everything they could from these cultures that they're conquering, to just like demonstrate that, oh, that's not us. We're not like them. They don't have the exact same system and doctrine as we do that would dispute all Mosaic history. So there's questions in terms of like the veracity of the human sacrifice going on in the old Mexico and with the Druids. But you know, if it is accurate, it's pretty wild.
You remember that guy I quoted in the whole, maybe it's in Terminalia, the Gustav, the guy who's the Christian missionary in China in like the early 1800s, like I think it was the 1830s or whatever. Well, he was saying that belief, that transmigration of the soul and all this reincarnation shit is what made the populations of Asia so miserable, because he's like, every freaking like bum thinks if he just suffers hard enough and enough times he comes back, he'll eventually be a king in one life, right? So it keeps like them in this like weird complacency or whatever. And he said, he's like, it breeds atheism. And he's like, just if the whole experience in China, it's real interesting, because when you start looking at their history, like I have a post scheduled to come out with the pyramids, you know, and people, I know your audience, this is the stuff that I don't really put in my books, because it's so speculative that I don't want to put stuff that I can't back up. However, oh wait, I'm showing you my my Substack. But basically, there's like over 40 ancient pyramids. Have you seen these? Like they're buried in China and they've only excavated like 2 and it's very mediocre. Have you seen this, Chance?
I don't think so.
Man, I wish I know I can find this. So basically, anyways, there are pyramids in China. And when you start looking at the Chinese empires, they run into the same problems that the Indians run into, which is they've got nothing pretending to be history, really going into, I think like 200 BC. And you look at Chinese empires, look at this thing. This is a tomb. Let's see if I can turn my phone sideways, maybe get some better. Yeah, baby. Look at that. This is a tomb in China. And this is where the stuff where they found these terracotta armies. You ever heard of these?
It's like very much like a stupa or tumuli to have a burial chamber under a tower.
Yes. And so you're wondering how all this shit went down in China.
We stoop over, stoop down. That's straight from the Pictish towers and the British or the Buddhist stupas.
Yep. And it looks like
get down on hands and knees to get in there. You have to stoop.
Yeah. And look, the 4 horses, the seasons, all that stuff. These terracotta armies are crazy, man. This stuff is like, this is a post that's going to come out in like 3 months. So I'm showing it now, some of it, but like, look, what happened? How dare you? Like, look at these mounds, dude. And they're all pyramids. You know what the Chinese government's saying? Well, we don't want to destroy them because we don't have the technology to excavate them properly. Okay, then that goes into other stuff. But I just wanted to show you that because your audience might be interested in that. I'm sure a lot of them they're familiar with that for sure. But Chance dropped out, or am I just front?
Oh, I'm sorry, I left you big.
Oh no, okay. I just wasn't sure if you dropped out. I'll keep going. I got more stuff.
I was trying to interact with the chat, but I'm having more tech issues. I had to do it through my phone.
Thing. But going back to this stuff, what if this stuff is colonized by Egypt? What if China is colonized by the Americas, not the other way around, and that's why they look Asian? I don't know, but I'm telling you, there's the stuff that we're seeing in Mexico, right? That's going to be in the book, the terminology and stuff. Especially when you narrate that, like, dude, it's there. There is diffusion. How is it getting there? And it's either real or it's part of the cover up, and all of it's fake. And all these are just modern accounts. But I wanted to read something to you from Lempriere's classical dictionary. I know you've seen this because I think you've read it in our audiobook, but I don't think the audience has heard this. The inhabitants, he's talking about the Greeks. The inhabitants were a rude and barbarous race, living in forests and caves, ignorant of agriculture, without cities or social regulations of any kind, and unacquainted even with the use of fire. Their general name was Graici. In confirmation of this last remark, we have nothing but a few scattered passages in ancient writers, which, however, are fully to the point. Alcman, and after him Sophocles, speak of the Greci or Graici, because it's AI, as the progenitors of the Hellenes or Hellenes. To the same purport are Aristotle, the Parian marble, and Eusebius, as also Apollodorus. These authorities, at first view, may seem to relate only to the Hellenists as a portion of the main race, but it must be recollected that the authors cited used the term Hellenes in the meaning which it bore in the later age when it designated the whole Grecian community, to say nothing of the manifest traces of a common origin in the different dialects throughout the land. Graici, therefore, was a general appellation for the original inhabitants. In Greece, however, it gradually disappeared and was succeeded by the name of Hellenes, and remained in Italy during every subsequent period in the mouths of the Latins as the appellation by which they characterized their eastern neighbors. This admits of an easy solution if we suppose, as the facts themselves fully warrant, that the inhabitants of Italy were indebted to the Pelagic for the first knowledge which they received of the inhabitants of Greece. Now, I take exception with that last part because the Pelagic is what the Greeks called the Phoenicians. And other people have sussed out the fact that the Phoenicians civilized the Greek, not the other way around. So the big thing that I'm claiming that I've never seen, actually, it's not true. I have seen one account of one man who was like, the Greek, Latin is not descended from Greek. I forget who his name is. I did cite him, but it was just a very brief thing because I haven't read deeply into his work. I saw an account of him, and a lot of this stuff is from like hundreds of years ago, so it's hard to track down some of these sources. But there are people, but I've never seen anyone living, let's say that. There's no other person alive that I've seen say Greek is not the parent of Latin. And the reason I did that, I've come to this conclusion, is because we've seen in our upcoming book that's going to be coming out, the Audible, the Celtic, the Roman, and the Sanskrit have such affinity that it's impossible they're not connected. All of the other languages have all the qualities of what happens to a language as it gets improved upon and spread out and all this other stuff. Sanskrit stayed perfect. It stayed a priestly language. It stayed a language that conformed to all of its own rules, which tells me it's not a language that was disseminated amongst the people, which means it couldn't have been a language of conquest, especially when the Brahmins were forbidden to leave their lands. So how would it have gotten to the Mediterranean and to Britain if the people who were responsible for doing it and taking it there were forbidden to go there in the first place? That's why I think all this shit is going down. And you see places like, Mauritania, they say it means lands of the Moors. No, Maur is Phoenician, it means great, right? Prince. And you see this in the British kings, Condo Maurus, Quis Maurus, Combolo Maurus, Induccio Maurus, Verido Maurus, Tutto Maurus, right? Mauritania is the land of Mars, or the land of the great, and because that's where Mars comes from, Maur, god of war, Tyr, Sir, the Lord. So that's one of the things that I want to bring up, in that term Berber. It has no ethnological value, just like Moor has no ethnological value. It's basically a term like barbarian, but in those days it meant stranger or foreigner. And so according to...
Do you think there's something other than the traditional explanation for Berber or Barber being like they say that it was because the Greeks thought anyone who didn't speak Greek sounded like they're saying better, and that's seriously that's what modern academic scholars say the origin of barber or barbarian is.
Yeah, that's the Latin too. The Latin didn't mean, it wasn't like you were a savage. It was more of like they're a stranger. They're not from...
Yeah, they don't speak Greek. So it sounds like gibberish, and that's where the term Berber comes from, according to the mainstream.
And Numidian, the people, I guess the locals, the ethnic population that I guess was there before the Phoenicians or whatever, apparently they have their own language. It's totally different. But when you look at the cities that are set up there, that are Phoenician and Roman and all that stuff, it's so obviously the ancient universal empire that we're uncovering that whether the locals are there or not is irrelevant. What we're talking about is the actual civilization and the systems of language and priestcraft that gets set up there. And that's the significant point. And so that's what they're saying is all these other cultures, when it's clearly from ancient Italy. It's using the same masonry. And why is this important? Because you have this guild, this merchant class that are all dependent on each other. You have the priests for the astronomy and the languages and all that stuff, right? That's why the sailors got the holy language. You have the navigators who take them to and fro. You have the masons that build all their temples in accordance with their knowledge. And then you have the merchants who get set up at every port to do the business and make the money, so that when they go and mine, and you probably include the miners too, because that's what made Etruria prominent is its ability to smelt iron. And that's another thing. So if you go to a foreign land and you see they don't have the ability to smelt metals, well, then maybe that diffusion is not coming from Etruscans or
He who
Italians.
smelt
Maybe
it
it's
dealt it.
right, because that's one of the hiccups, or one of the wrenches in our wheel, if you will, is in the cogs, is that when the Spaniards got to America, the Mexicans didn't know how to smelt iron. They didn't know how to even mine it, despite having iron-rich mines. So then they were like, well, why is their religious customs, why is their mythoses the same as Judaism and Christianity? Why do they have the flood story of Noah, right? It's Cox, right? Same thing. He sends out a fucking vulture instead of a raven. He sends out a hummingbird instead of a dove, but it's the same friggin' story. How do they have this?
He's even the one who gives them winemaking.
Yeah. They have
Which I'm not even
everything.
sure makes sense. Do they even have grapes?
No, they had
Mexico?
well, in the north they do, but the Concord grapes that we have in North America, a lot of them are grapes in North America, they're too sweet for wine. That's why you don't really see a lot of like North American varietals, even though they're delicious. The best to
maybe not
eat,
as
but
well known thing about Noah is that he super into winemaking. Sounds a lot like Bacchus.
yeah, it does. And so that's my thing, is like, how are they getting that? Maybe this didn't come from the Phoenicians or the Europeans. Maybe it actually did come from the Asians or the Indians, right? But then you have the problem with, well, there's the navigation problem. Now you have these people from Thailand who, and possibly Java and all that, those islands, they went to these islands. That's what the Peloponnesians are, right? And you get these, they made it to like Hawaii and all these places all along the Pacific. But you don't really see them, you don't see them getting to America till much later. And the question is like, well, is that true or is that false? And I'm exploring that in some upcoming posts, because there's also claims of Japanese pottery found in Ecuador. And I'm on the fence. I'm not dismissing it out of hand, but it does require a little bit of seeing what you want to see. So, but I think it is worthy of the audience's attention. There are other claims of diffusion from Asia in the Americas. And if you look at the American phenotypes, it's clearly Asian if it's not native to America. The only thing that would be different that I've never seen anywhere else is when you meet some of these actual native tribes, if someone's like a full-blooded, some of them actually have really red copper skin. It's unlike any other place. And that's what I would say is maybe some of this is like unique to America, but is it possible that they at one time went to Asia? Is it possible that they one time went to Africa or the Mediterranean and did Egypt? I don't know. I think all this stuff is exciting now, and it gives people other tasks. It gives people, oh shit, you're clearly debunking a lot of the stuff that we've been taught. Well, what else is going on? You know, and I think that's what's exciting about this, is like everything becomes new again. And, you know.
Well, bud, I was just trying to find on a bookshelf behind me. I have this book about like the Japanese mythical ancient history, because, you know, they have a lot of similarities going on there. And there are some accounts that, and even some scholars that in that book, they were claiming a foreigner, like Celtic type ruler on Japan, that they're using Japan as a type of stronghold or headquarters for a larger empire in the ancient farthest reaches of their historical annals. So that's another, you know, there's so many, if this is a worldwide thing, then there's going to be connections and leftover traces everywhere in the world. And we need more people to pick this up and run with it. And yeah, what's next for you, Dylan? We're going to wrap this up, but thanks for
look at this. Look at this megalithic shit. Look at this megalithic shit in Japan.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
like it's there.
It's the same thing.
That's all.
It looks exactly like the Inca.
Yep. And you know what's funny is in the old accounts they're written Ingas. Yeah. Well, what's next for me? I'm just posting all of my stuff. Let me show you. I'll go to my Substack. So, oh, this is what I want to offer everybody who's watching this. So after today, because some people are working, you know, or they've got family nights on Sundays, so they might not have been able to catch this. So I'm gonna leave this open for a few days, 3 days after. So starting tomorrow, we'll do 3 days, not counting today. If you touch base with me, and the reason I'm using Instagram is because it's an easy solution for me to not create work for chance. You can just send me a message and I can copy it from my phone, my Instagram. I can't do it on a desktop because you can't see message like requests from people you don't know on the desktop app or whatever. But on my phone, I can get messages from anybody, and I can copy and paste your email into Substack and give you a free subscription for a month to see if you like it. It's a win-win-win because it allows Chance to provide value to his audience. It's a win for you because you get access to everything I've done for the last 3 months and the next month, and to see if you want to stay subscribed at no risk to you. And it's a win for me because it gives me the opportunity to earn your business. And so what I have is, I'll show you what, like, just if you can see, I'll zoom in once I get this going, but like I have like tons of posts that I've already scheduled, right? That you can go see right now and just start reading once you get access behind the paywall. But these are all stuff that I've done. Now I have posts scheduled. I call them fresh batches. I have them scheduled just so you can see I'm not bullshitting you. If you could make me big one more time, that'd be great. Look at all the, oh, maybe I need to zoom in a little. Why is it like that? Yeah, so I've got posts scheduled all the way through into July 12th so far. You can see that right there. So I'm not bullshitting you. You see the value. This is your basic. This is what I'm doing with my post from now, because my Spirit World, the series, this had an agenda, and the agenda was to expose the ancient universal empire. And we've tracked language as far as we can go. And now it's time to look at other examples of diffusion, to other possibilities, and go from there. And so that's where I'm at. But the reason I like Substack is because, look, you guys, I can post pictures and show you what I'm talking about. I can show you all these things, right? This is, remember I was telling you about the Anglo-Saxon runes? Look at this. This is behind a paywall, but like you can see this is all coming from Britain, these runes. This is before. And so what I love about this that I can't do in print, oh, this is the Abacadarium. Dude, this is the, look, check this out. This is the Marsiliana tablet. This is all the shit they thought was ancient Greek that turned out to be, no, it's ancient Etruscan. And you can't find a Greek alphabet older than this. But they'll say it's Greek because it has the same letters as the Greek. But it's because it's from Phoenician. And it's Italian. So I can show this in Substack. I can't do this in books because it costs too much to print. And so then I have to charge too high. And then it's kind of like a paint, like July's End is a book that has tons of color photos in it to show you what I'm talking about, but it costs $40 because it's expensive to print because of the color photography. So Substack is where all my stuff is from now on. And unless something develops, if I get like another subject that can be really laser focused, like what I've been doing, then I'll write another Spirit World. But if not, I'll just, you get to see my research as it goes, maybe connected, maybe not connected. And you don't have to wait a year or two for a book to come out. You just see it as I go and you do with it what you will. And this is all me over delivering. My work is not part of what you're paying for. What you're actually technically paying for, if you go do a member's subscription, it's to have access to me bi-weekly. I make myself available to the chat. I'll be available to everybody. As soon as I'm done here, I'll be available for an hour. I do that every 2 weeks for people who want to share research or get my take on anything in their own work. And so, yeah, it's about developing a community of serious researchers and just giving value.
Man, inspiration.
Yeah, you got to get in there, man. You got to get on Substack because there's a lot of shit you can do with your stuff, and it's reference.
Oh,
right?
I know.
So
and I
you
just
don't have to look at Google anymore, right? You remember I made a post about this subject. I know where to find it, and boom, you can get all the stuff you've posted. And it gives
one
you
of us though
email.
needs to back down and take like Sunday night, give it up to the other one so that we can be in each other's thing more. Because I do InnerVerse at the same time you're doing your Substack hangout.
Oh yeah, I can change the time. I just fix up Sunday night just because I'm usually like I'll be active while I'm watching you, and I go active at 7 Pacific. So you start at 7 Pacific because I'll do it at a different time.
Oh, I usually started about I guess 5 Pacific, but
I can
that's
do
like
it.
when
I can do it on Saturday night if people. I can like. I'm not attached to Sunday night. I was just thinking of a time where people are going to be around. They're chilling, whatever. But I can do it at a different day. It's not a big deal at all. I can do it on Saturdays, whatever. But yeah, we'll let the chat decide. You know, if people come members and they say, "Hey, we want you," you have to be a paid member to comment. That's another thing I love about this Substack is you can control. You can make sure that if someone's commenting, that's somebody who supports you. So it's worth giving them your time and attention. You know, it's not some random on the internet trashing your work. If it's legit criticism, it's from somebody who supports you, and that's good. You know, but you should get on there because for all the work you do, you can post your podcast there. It's like Patreon, but better. And you get paid within a couple of days when someone subscribes. Like there's no waiting for anything. And you have an audience, just start building it there. You can put your podcast up there. It's really cool. If you ever want me to do like a FaceTime where I show you, just let me know and we'll get it going. But for other researchers out there, because I know your channel is primarily a lot of researchers, not so much audience. Like I feel like a lot of people who watch you
that's what I love about them.
Are like
so
my
true.
competition. So do you, if I thought about it like a competition, but we are like kind of competitors. So what I would tell you guys, if you're not on Substack, you have to be on Substack because it allows you to circumvent shadow banning. Everyone who signs up has to give an email. You then, when you send your posts out, it goes directly to their email. And you can export that file. So if Substack goes down, you can take all of your audience to another platform. Trust me, guys, get on there, start building that because it's changing the publish industry, right? And it's awesome. There's so much content on there, so much value. And, you know, you guys who are researchers, you can use it in your work, right? You might have a book you're writing and one of my posts is related to it and you can source it. And I'm not writing a book on that subject, so I'm not going to do anything beyond the little post that I did on Substack. Who cares? You know, it's just a really good thing. And if there's any like serious researchers who are actually doing posts on Substack and you want to trade subscriptions, you can do that too. You can say, hey, let's trade for a month to see if we like each other's work. And you just give each other free subscriptions. It's so fucking cool, dude.
Dude, I know what's going to happen next is the Spirit World podcast will be a Substack thing.
Yeah, it's called InnerVerse.
No, but you just always got so much with the fresh batches. That's why I think we just need it to be its own thing and like monthly or weekly or what.
Yeah, maybe.
And also InnerVerse.
Maybe it's a lot of work, you know, like I don't take days off. Like
so I'm saying I'll produce it for you.
Oh,
we can
yeah.
talk shop later.
Yeah, we can talk that. Yeah, if it's something you think that I can do and do successfully, even if it's like, you know, 15-minute posts or 15-minute.
Exactly. Yeah, it can be anything. It can be anything. We could experiment with it. Yeah.
No, I'm down, dude. Like Substack has energized me because I love
I can tell. I'm all foggy from a head cold and you just carried this whole thing like a champion.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm not trying to do that. I just like to over prepare because I love giving value. When I can give fucking value, dude, I feel so good about myself. But I haven't had a lot of things in life that I've ever been able to provide value to people. You know, like I really like win-win-win deals. I hate when somebody does business with me and then they walk away like feeling like somebody got the short end of the stick. I hate that. So my entire life, I don't go into businesses where somebody has to lose. I hate that. And so this is like the first time in a long time I found something like, yes, I can give free shit and earn your business. Because if you like it and you say subscribe, then I win.
Man, it's been a really good time. We're gonna have to end somewhere though. And,
yeah, dude. Thanks for having me on. And make sure everybody goes and checks out Topher on Friday. He's got one that just came out on this past Friday with me. That's a really cool.
It's super good. He did a great job of pulling out some more kind of personal stuff out of you that I think people, if they like your work and like you, they're going to enjoy that conversation. TopherHQ.com.
Yeah. And hopefully he'll do a show with you soon because, you know, I'm trying to get people to have you on because real talk, Chance Garton's going to be the GOAT. I'm not going to be doing this forever. Chance Garton's got to be the GOAT at some point. He's been trained well.
Once this notebook is full, we'll make a book out of it and we'll get somewhere.
Hell yeah. Yeah, then you can be a guest on my podcast if I ever have one or something like that.
Your podcast, I'm going to produce it. You just have to show up and share research, and I'll drive. Yeah, that's like, we should do that.
Yeah, and then maybe you like comment and stuff, so I don't, because like the part of my thing is I get so burned out doing like I'm gonna like it takes a lot out of you, man. Podcasts are hard. Like I have a lot of respect for you guys, especially you guys who are doing like multiple shows a week. I do like one a week, and I'm like. I don't smoke, but if I did, I'd need a cigarette,
Yeah. Wow. Well, man. All right. We're going to call it here, guys.
All right, guys. Dylan. Thank you so much for supporting Chance and being here. We really appreciate you, because without the viewership, there's no reason to do this. Just be us talking to the void. So the fact that people are here, thanks for supporting Chance. He gives me a platform. Chance changed my life, you guys. Chance put me in touch with Crow. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have something going on because of Crow, right? That first episode we did, Pop My Sales, I lost my jobs in the COVID, and the industry that I worked in, I'll never get back to that. The psyche's gone. So my whole life plan for the last 5 years has been upended. So now I just focused on, or for the future for 5 years, what I was going to plan to do, work hard and save and get a property. This is what all I've been doing full time, and it wouldn't have been possible without Chance Garton. So please show your gratitude and keep supporting Chance, because he helps people.
Well, man, I will say, there's been a few times in my life where the inner voice, whatever you want to call it, God whispering in your ear or guardian angel or who knows what, but there was for sure back in 2019 when I came across your work, before I'd even really cracked into the books, I got this like really strong. It was the exact same as when I came across Eileen's work with the tuning forks. That ended up being huge for me. Yeah, I got that voice about your work when I just came across you on Instagram. Something was like, you need to help this guy. He's going to help you. It's a win-win-win-win, as you just described. It's got to happen.
Yep. We'll take care of each other.
At that point, my entire strategy was like, okay, well, I got to like earn some trust and credibility with this person and build up a relationship, and we can work together. And it's like, it was so radically true.
And what's cool is we're literally business partners now. Like you supporting, like if you buy the audiobook, Chance gets his royalty. So you're supporting both of us. Like we're literal business partners, and it's exciting. And, like just,
oh, and I've been accused. I've even received accusations of, taking stances just because I could make money off of your work. So that's why I support certain ideas. Like,
he didn't do the first two. I had someone else doing the first two. And, so he didn't if Chance didn't help me, I wouldn't have been able to do 3 motherfucking books in the last year. Fire. Oh, look at this. What's this? Oh, it's fire. Oh shit. We got another one. Fire. You know what Crow texted me the other day? He said, I'm damn near close to calling you an old school researcher. He's so happy. Like, he's like, this shit. He's like, are you doing this on your own? Like, it was so funny. But dude, if it weren't for, so anyone who's saying anything about Chance, A, shut the fuck up. But B, if it wasn't for him, I'd probably be pauper poor and like begging for money somewhere. Who knows? I might be dead by now.
Well, secret kings, they always say what they're going to say.
I don't listen to these people, man.
Just block them and move on.
Long story short,
they just get their fruit boots on and they roll on to the next person to bother.
They go to the next gay bar. They go to the gay bar parade. It's like gay bar hopping. But no, for the audience, you guys keep supporting Chance. He's a good guy. He's helped me, and he can help you. And just keep doing good work. That's the thing, is sometimes it does get frustrating because your work's not being received. But that was the one thing I want to talk about. In the first 2 books, if you've never looked into spirit world, they can be controversial. The first 2 books, I was basically writing to my 16-year-old self. So some of the times I write how I talk. So some of the times I'm being aggressive, but the whole point is the first 2 are alchemically designed to show us we're all hypocrites. And that is our challenge in our life's journey here, is to minimize the hypocrisy we engage in so that we're thinking, feeling, and behaving and speaking in unison. We're congruent, because when you're not congruent in the way you think and the way you feel and the way you behave, it comes across as creepy. And a lot of times people are having interactions where they're not socially calibrated. It's because everything's not congruent. You're being incongruent. It's not that you're creepy. Just
it also
something needs
causes
to
your
be
body
fixed.
your body responds negatively and your health is diminished whenever those three things are out of sync. Guaranteed. Promise you.
Yep. Yeah. So no, it's really cool, dude. And it's fun sharing our workout stories together and texting stuff like, oh, I'm doing 70 pounds 8 times, 70-pound dumbbells, motherfucker.
Yeah,
Upright.
dude. Dylan put me on a workout program. I've been getting legitimate gains. Tomorrow's leg
so
day.
cool.
Wish me luck.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, tomorrow is leg day for me too. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's good, dude. So thank you, and thanks to your audience, and I hope everyone has an amazing rest of your Sunday night. And I'll see you, for those of my members of my Substack, we'll see you in the chat after this.
Beautiful. Thanks, man. Much love, brother.
Likewise, dude. Much love to you.
I guess I can't play the outro music. I am having crazy tech issues. All right, we're just gonna wait. Here it goes. Okay, cool.